Okay, I think we are on YouTube. Just one moment. Okay, I think we are on YouTube.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
I can see the sign.
perfect. Great. We are there and also in Facebook. I think so. Mauricio will tell us anyway. If we have problems, Mauricio, on Facebook, you tell me, or please tell people that to enter YouTube, to join us on YouTube, ok? Maurício, então você. Mas eu não vou poder mudar a descrição agora mesmo, eu acho, Maurício. Deixa eu ver, porque tem uma mudança aqui que eu deveria fazer. Just one moment, please. Okay. That's okay. I could do it. Well, let me tell people that we are here with Nagmeh Samini, that is a teacher at the University of Arts of Tehran from the theater course there. And she's the person who helped us to understand theater in this project that we created, named Persia. Então, esta é Nagmeh Samini, professora doutora da Universidade de Teerã, de Arte de Teerã, do curso de teatro, e ela foi quem nos ajudou a entender o teatro contemporâneo no Irã, nesse projeto que é a Persia. É um prazer estar com Nagmeh Samini, porque ela vai nos ajudar a entender um pouco do que é o teatro em Teherã, o teatro iraniano, porque ela é conhecedora tanto do teatro contemporâneo quanto do cinema contemporâneo, porque ela também é professora de roteiro, e ela também é uma conhecedora da história do teatro iraniano. É um privilégio tê-la aqui conosco. It's a privilege to have you here for all the knowledge that you have about contemporary theater and also the cinema, because you are also a teacher of playwright and all the knowledge of that you have of the history of Iranian theater.
Thank you so much, Luis, for inviting me. I'm so pleased to be here with you. You know, I love technology just because of this. Let us to connect from different cultures and different countries. Actually, at the moment, I live in Seattle, so I'm connecting you with from Seattle, and that would be great to have a free chat with you about Iranian theater, history of Iranian theater, and also the common aspects of Iranian theater and Brazilian theater, which I am so curious about. I have a few Brazilian friends, and I always had great experience with my Brazilian friends. I felt so close to them, actually. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Nagmeh. I would like to. We have been in Iran in 2010, and there we were participating in the Fire Festival, and we could see a wonderful play that you created that was Home or House, and it was quite impressive because before our first show we had to present our show to three censors, three people that one in a suit and two with turbans, and they were not telling us not to say something politically, for example, but just moral things. We should not show our legs. We should not show dance in a certain way or something like. And it was quite a surprise. It was a big surprise to see your show that was really very strong, uh, talking about abort, a girl that was aborted in a bath tube, and about a family that was not together anymore, but what they were together, but it was uh, falling down. It was and as a metaphor of a country, of a metaphor of a moment in your country. And it was a surprise for us. Let me just translate. Deixa eu dizer que nós estivemos no Irã em 2005 e tivemos participando de um festival onde nós tivemos que nos apresentar para três censores, um censor, dois censores de turbante e um censor de terno, e foi uma surpresa ver uma peça escrita por Nagmeh Samini chamada Casa ou Lar e que foi falava de uma moça abortando numa banheira, que falava de uma situação de uma casa que se desagregava das várias pessoas daquela casa e, ao mesmo tempo, também falando da desagregação de um país. É muito estranho ver uma posição tão corajosa naquele momento. Eu queria que ela falasse um pouco disso. I would like you to explain us this strange situation when you present a so strong text in a so strong play like that one.
Yeah, actually, first of all, I'm so happy that you have watched that play in Tehran. That is a play that I wrote about maybe from now more than 12 years ago, about 12 years ago. And actually, you know, I can understand that for the people who comes from abroad, censorship in Iran is so complicated. So that is a very recurrent question I always face with, that how could you work there and how can you write this kinds of or write about this, you know, political issues or social issues while censorship is so hard. So I can tell you that, yeah, I think the issue of censorship in Iran is so complicated, and it differs from time to time, actually. So it is not something that you always have the same rules and the same red lines. So the red lines moves based on the political situation of the country. And when I wrote the play, actually, when I wrote Home, that was not a very harsh time of Iranian history in terms of political situation. But when it went to on a stage, it was not the best time in Iran history, actually. But when you watch that, it was a staging of the play. So at that time, again, the situation was a little bit calmer and censorship was lighter. So people could stage the play like Khane or the home. The other thing is that as the playwright who was born in Iran and who grew up in Iran and whose life, I mean, most of my life passed after the revolution, not before the revolution. So I'm so familiar with the situation. Actually, this is not just about me. All the Iranian playwrights and all the Iranian artists, actually, in general, are so familiar with the red lines. So what we try to do is to just be very close to red lines, but not touch it. And this is a profession, actually. This is a profession that we learned through the time. But I 100% understand that for you as a foreigner who attended a festival in Iran, this is a little bit complicated. So the play Khane didn't get permission for publication for about 4 years. And then after 4 years, I could get the permission, actually the publisher could get the permission for publishing this play. So it never follows one formula when you are talking about red lines in Iran. And yes, you're right. When I was writing the play, I was trying to construct a metaphor, not just about Iran, but about whole the world, how the world is getting smaller and smaller.
Thank you, perfect. A Nagmeh nos conta que o que acontece é que o Irã é muito complicado. Então, em um certo momento, pode estar havendo uma certa situação política lá, mas depois há uma outra situação. Então, esses diferentes momentos permitem ou proíbem coisas. Então, existe uma linha vermelha que vai mais para frente ou mais para trás, que avança ou recua conforme o tempo. Então, ela diz que, por exemplo, quando ela escreveu o texto, ela não tinha problema, não teve problemas, mas 4 anos depois, quando ele foi encenado, já teve problemas. E ela demorou 4 anos para chegar a publicar esse texto dela, porque tinha dificuldades, não era permitido, até que, finalmente, depois de 4 anos, ela pôde publicar o texto. O texto, de fato, é uma metáfora, não só do Irã, mas de todo o mundo. E é isso que acontece. Então, como é um país muito complicado, essa linha vai mudando a cada momento. Nagmeh, we know something about Iranian movies, and we can understand a kind of dramaturgy in Iran that is quite delicate. It's not just one story, one with a hard punch, but a delicate story that is built while the play is running. You know, it's not just a story that begins very clearly in the first moment and so on. And it calls our attention in Brazil. Delicate stories, or sometimes we don't see any story at all, and this is the story that is performed on the movies we see, for example, and in some texts that we are able to read. Please tell us about this connection and about this dramaturgy, and maybe some connections with the cultural past or the cultural moment in Iran. Eu pergunto só para Nagmeh, que a gente diz, eu digo que a gente tem muita referência do cinema iraniano e que o cinema iraniano é um cinema muito delicado e essa dramaturgia que a gente conhece do Irã também é uma dramaturgia que muitas vezes não é uma história muito clara que entra de vez, que tem uma grande resolução ou um grande impacto, mas uma história muito delicada que vai se montando aos poucos. E às vezes a gente nem reconhece a própria história que está por trás daquilo, mas a gente reconhece ao longo da história aquela história que aconteceu. E eu peço para ela nos contar sobre conexões com o passado histórico do Irã, cultural, e também talvez com algum momento que dê origem talvez a isso. Ok, Nagmeh.
Actually, Luis, I have to say that we have very different kinds and different source of storytelling in Iran regarding to our very long history of literature and poetry. And I'm sure that you already have heard and have read about that. Actually, before Islam came to Iran, we had literature and we had poetry in a very professional way. And afterward, we continued this tradition of poetry and literature in different ways. So I think there is, of course, there is a very strong connection in between the stories that we are telling now through theater and cinema and or literal background and or classical treasures of literature, poetry and literature. But what I have to add is that in cinema in Iran has a very broad overview in terms of storytelling. So sometimes in movies, like movies directed by Asghar Farhadi, you can see very dramatic stories from the very beginning of the narrative. So when you're watching a Farhadi's movie, you feel that you are experiencing a very dramatic points and very dramatic story. But on the other hand, if you are watching a Kiarostami's movie, you feel that there is no story. You feel that it is so calm and so slow, actually. And both are from Iranian cinema, and both are from both are connected to our background of our poetry and literature. So we have both different kinds of storytelling in Iran, and it very depends on which director you are talking about. I personally love stories. So in all my plays, I try to tell a story, but I always try to find a different way to tell my story. So sometimes it's not believable that how different kinds of narrative you can find in Iranian cinema, as well as plays written by Iranian playwrights. So there are so many different ways of storytelling in Iran. But the point is that sometimes those slow narratives are more, catch attraction from foreign audience, because they feel that first of all, they have time to just digest what they are watching, because it comes from completely different culture. And the other thing is that sometimes people are so excited about the new way of storytelling. So it's why that, for example, Kiarostami was so popular in all over the world. People were so excited about how he tells a story in a very different way from what they used to. For example, it's very different from what you can find in Hollywoodian movies.
Perfect. A Nagmeh fala que existem muitas maneiras diferentes de se contar essas histórias no Irã. Então, existem muitos tipos de dramaturgia diferentes, não só essa. Quando a gente vê os filmes do Abbas Kiarostami, por exemplo, nós vemos uma narrativa muito lenta, que é muito sedutora para a gente, porque é uma maneira muito diferente da maneira hollywoodiana. Então, isso nos chama muita atenção dos estrangeiros. Mas existem muitas formas diferentes, tradicionais. Ela mesmo gosta muito de contar histórias, das histórias colocadas. Às vezes também tem muitas histórias colocadas de uma maneira muito direta no teatro iraniano, de uma maneira muito forte, mas que esta maneira, esse tipo de narrativa, é uma maneira que acaba sendo muito sedutora para o estrangeiro, porque é uma maneira muito original também. Actually, when we think about Iranian theater, we also see all these very strong stories that come from, for example, from the epic stories and, for example, Rostam in Sorabe Rostam, all these stories that come from Ferdowsi, that comes from Shahnameh, for example, and also this theater that comes from that is very ancient, that the Nakali, for example, that brings a very strong way of telling a story in front of a piece of a painting, and this is very strong too. What do you think that is the influence of these traditional forms of theater, also this theater that used to be present in the center of a house, on a fountain, and so on? What do you think? Does there connection between, or an influence between these traditional forms and contemporary theater in Iran, or it's just a shadow of a lost past? Let me translate. Existem outras formas de tradução, outras formas de teatro, por exemplo, como o Nakali, que é uma forma de teatro narrada, uma pessoa conta uma história muito dramática em frente a uma pintura, onde ele vai mostrando pequenos detalhes e fazendo muitos gestos fortes. Existe também um teatro baseado na poesia persa épica, clássica, que é o Shahnameh, do Ferdowsi, um poema épico. Então, muitas coisas são tiradas dessas histórias épicas e que fazem referência ao passado iraniano, mas, ao mesmo tempo, existe realmente uma conexão entre essas formas teatrais. Por exemplo, um teatro que se faz em pátios de casas, em cima de uma fonte, onde se coloca um tablado e as pessoas se apresentam ali no centro. Existe uma conexão entre essas formas teatrais e o teatro contemporâneo, ou é só uma sombra de um passado distante? And you are a specialist also in the 1001 stories, aren't you? So that you're very aware of storytelling. Tell me.
Yeah. First of all, I wish I could understand your beautiful language. I think after this meeting, I will start learning Spanish. That's beautiful language, actually. So, actually, I love 1001 Nights. It's more than now. It's more than maybe about 25 years that I'm working on this beautiful, rich book, which it's researching never stop for me. So, okay, so let's answer your question. Actually, you have a great knowledge about Iranian literature. So, as you rightly mentioned, Shahnameh is a great source for storytelling for most of Iranians. And the stories like Rostam و Sohrab, Siavash, Zahak, they all have so many details, and there are so many stories for the people who are seeking for a story in these books. And as you rightly mentioned, Shahnameh has a great connection to performance. So we have different kinds of performing Shahnameh. One of them was canvas reading, which was, you mentioned that it was like you have a canvas and all the Shahnameh's stories, or one of the Shahnameh's stories, just painted on that, and a performer tried to explain and try to narrate what is happening on the canvas. And the other thing is that Naqali, which is kind of just performing the story of Shahnameh, one of the stories of Shahnameh, like a monologue, but full of actions and full of movements, and some of these movements have specific meanings. But the other question is that how we are under the influence of these kinds of traditional theater. I think unconsciously and indirectly, we are under all these kinds of traditional performances for sure. Sometimes we even don't know that we are doing something under the influence of those traditional plays. Some of those traditional plays related to Shahnameh, and some of them are religious, as you know, like Tazieh, and some of them are kind of satire or comic plays like Khayme Shabazi. You already have worked on that. So indirectly and unconsciously, we are under the influence for sure. But sometimes some playwrights, and I can say most of the playwrights, at least for once, try to use these kinds of traditional plays in a new way, in a modern way, on their own plays. I had the same experience. I remember that in like 2-3 plays of mine. Actually, these are the plays I have written, so I can show you which one. So yeah, maybe you.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not good in the direction. I'm confused. So yeah, so in one of them called Sheklak, you see there, this one, I tried to use one of the traditional Iranian performance called Ma'arekegiri. It's not easy to translate it, but anyway, it's called Ma'arekegiri, and later on, if you want, I can explain about that. I tried to find a modern way to bring this traditional performance on the stage. Or in one other one, which is called, maybe I don't have this here. Yeah, maybe I can't find it. But anyway, in one of my other play, I tried to modernize a Tazieh and bring Tazieh, which is a very religious play, in a completely different context. So this is my experience, and I'm sure that some other writers and directors, at least for once, had this temptation to modernize the traditional way of performance in Iran in the new way. I'm sorry, I talk so long, so maybe I need to break sometimes and let you translate.
Ok, ela interrompe um minutinho. De qualquer maneira, só para eu traduzir, e de qualquer maneira ela diz que muitas vezes os iranianos usam elementos, e ela mesma faz isso, elementos que são elementos tradicionais, de histórias tradicionais, das histórias épicas tradicionais, para compor os seus espetáculos. Ela mesma fez isso, mas ela diz, sobretudo, que certamente todo esse passado dessas formas tradicionais, elas estão presentes na construção de uma dramaturgia contemporânea, mesmo que não seja de uma forma patente, de uma forma imediata. Então, existem muitas tradições, como, por exemplo, essa história do Nakali, que é, por exemplo, um tipo de representação em que fazem-se gestos muito fortes, em que é uma espécie de monólogo, com gestos muito fortes e uma ação, uma performance muito forte num monólogo, de um ator. Existe também essa narração desse painel pintado, dessa pintura. Então, por exemplo, usam um texto clássico como o Shahnameh, pintam, por exemplo, uma história clássica, naquele painel e a pessoa vai contando e apontando aquelas várias partes da pintura que falam daquelas várias histórias, dos vários momentos, dos vários aspectos daquela história que ela vai narrando. Existe um outro teatro também, que é esse Tadzié, que é esse teatro feito num espaço comum, num espaço que tem uma influência religiosa, tem uma base até religiosa, e existem outras formas, como a forma do teatro popular, sobre a qual a gente tem trabalhado agora, que é uma forma cômica de um teatro popular que se chama Nagmeh Samini, que é um teatro de bonecos muito semelhante ao nosso Mamulengo em muitos aspectos. Ela fala que ela mesma também já se debruçou sobre essas histórias na criação das narrativas dela. Okay, go on.
Luis, I found it. The play based on Taziye, which is a religious traditional play. This one is a Mid-Autumn Night's Dream. And I just borrowed the name from the famous play of Shakespeare, The Midsummer Night's Dream, but it doesn't have anything to do with that play. So I just wanted to show you that one.
Perfect. Ok. Ela só queria mostrar isso também, que é essa peça que usa os sonhos de uma noite de verão e ela usa o nome de uma peça da peça do Shakespeare, mas não tem nada a ver com ela e na verdade se baseia no Tadzié, que é esse teatro de fundo religioso e tradicional do Irã. Tell me, oh sorry. Okay. Tell me, please, Nagmeh, when we see, for example, in Iran, we see something that is quite strange. That is, we lived this in Brazil. We had a censorship when I began my career. I had to perform to some censors, and the lack of freedom is very complicated to any artist, of course. Anyway, I know that there are many artists in Iran that tries to manage to find a way between everything that is forbidden and allowed, this red line that you say, and try to create and to survive as an artist in these difficulties that the lack of freedom brings, of course. But anyway, I also see some artists that I could meet some artists that say, okay, but this is not censorship. This is an advice. It's special people that knows better than us what we need and what we should behave, the way we should behave, or it's for our best. And this is quite strange because there are many, the limits are very, very hard. For example, for dancing, for singing, and especially for women like you. And what is the reality of creation in Iran, and also for teaching in Iran, for teaching artists, I mean? I don't want to create any trouble or nothing like this, but just how you can manage and how artists can survive under these difficulties. And we know, for example, reading Hafez, for example, that Hafez is someone that should be forbidden because he's so iconoclastic. And for example, in Brazil, the censors wanted to arrest Sophocles once, for example. They wanted to arrest him, and this should happen. I would like you to comment this. Eu digo que ela, numa situação difícil como é difícil para um artista e como eles podem criar, porque se por um lado a gente vê artistas com muita dificuldade de criar por tantos limites que a censura impõe, nós também vemos muitas dificuldades, vemos artistas também que acham que o Ministério da Cultura e da Orientação Islâmica eles estão fazendo um bem para os artistas porque estão orientando eles e estão fazendo tudo pelo melhor para que eles possam se comportar da maneira devida e dizer as coisas adequadas. Então, a gente vê essa dupla situação no Irã, e é muito difícil, imagino eu, e é isso que eu pergunto, sobre a situação do artista, sobre essa situação, e também de um professor de teatro, sobretudo de uma mulher, num país onde as mulheres não podem dançar, não podem cantar, e onde, ao mesmo tempo, existe um poeta como Hafez, que deveria ser proibido, porque de tão iconoclasta que ele é e de tão polêmico que ele pode ser. E contando a Nagmeh a história de que aqui os censores no Brasil quiseram prender uma vez o Sófocles, porque esse tal de Sófocles era um sujeito que precisava ser censurado e preso. Tell me, Nagmeh.
Yeah, so first of all, I think the process of creation is, again, so complicated. So, yeah, it seems that it's not easy to create when you don't feel free and you don't have freedom. But our experience and my generation's experience is different because, as you rightly mentioned, you already have mentioned, we have a rich background of art and storytelling and painting and music. So we are from a country which is known with its poetry, with its music. So we have that background, and based on that background, we cannot not to be creative. I know it's a little bit, it has a twist. So we should be creative. We have to be creative. And the thing happened for us is that we try to be double creative when we faced with censorship. So I'm trying to find an example from one of my own plays. In a play of mine called The Language of White Berries. Again, I will show you here. This is this one. So yeah, I really needed to show this sexual, relation of a man and woman who are going to get divorced. And that was a very important part of my play. And I knew that I never ever can show that. And actually I didn't want it because first of all, I knew that I will face censorship. And the second thing is that culturally, I know it's not acceptable for the audience. So for both reasons, I really didn't want to show you. So what I came up with this idea that a little boy who hasn't been born yet is standing in front of a hotel, and he narrates that how their parents are making love in that room. He says, do you see that window? My parents now are there, and they are hugging each other and they are kissing each other and so on and so forth. And I didn't have any problem with censorship. I could stage the play, and I could publish the play. And the good thing was that I didn't hurt the audience culturally. So, and I think I was more creative than showing it directly. So the thing is that, in my opinion, who worked in Iran, I wish we had freedom. I wish we had the utmost line of freedom. But my experience says me that nobody, no kind of censorship never ever can stop creation. I think creation is just like a river. It finds its way anyway. If you just block it from its own main way, it will find another way to just continue its way. That is what I always tell to my students, that just try to create. Just try to find a way to create. That the creation is the most precious thing that we are in our hands, and nobody can stop us. Nobody can just stop creation. So what I can tell you is that what you see from Iranian cinema and from Iranian theater all come from this notion that creation is what we need even more than people from freer countries. So we need to be double creator or created. And the other thing is that actually teaching, I was teaching in the University of Tehran in the fine art department, the theater department, and that was part of the heaven. I can say you that was a heaven located in the center of Tehran, the capital of Iran. We were super free. We could talk about everything. Nobody didn't check us at the time, but it is now about 2 years that I'm not there. I mean here. And I'm not sure that the situation is the same or not. But fortunately, teaching at the time I was teaching in the University of Tehran was so free, unbelievable, but it was very free. So I remember that I pushed my students to perform their own plays, and we didn't let any censor come and revise our plays, because we said that this is something about students, and they are just students, and they need to be free, and they need to express themselves freely. So, and the very last answer to your question is that, always censors call themselves as advisors, but I don't believe it. Nobody believes it. That is a very respectful label for censors to call themselves advisor, because they can't be advisor. They don't know anything more than what we know about. We are educated in this field, but they didn't. So, or maybe if they did, they didn't do anything creative. So I don't believe that they are advisors. They are censors, and we are people who need to be creative to avoid red lines.
Wow, that's great, wonderful, wonderful. A Nagmeh nos conta primeiro que ela diz que as pessoas têm que ser duplamente criativas numa situação como essa. Então, essa falta de liberdade, claro que a liberdade é absolutamente necessária, mas que essa falta de liberdade obriga eles a serem duplamente criativos. Então, ela conta de uma peça que tinha que falar sobre divórcio, um casal que se divorciava, mas ela não podia falar sobre isso. Então, ela sabia que isso não ia ser permitido. Então, ela conta de uma história, a história a partir do ponto de vista de alguém que está fora de um hotel e que se refere a um casal que está ali dentro, fazendo amor lá dentro daquele hotel. Então, ela conta de uma maneira indireta e ela diz que isso acaba tendo um resultado para ela artístico superior até àquele resultado que ela teria se ela tratasse daquele tema diretamente. Ela fala também da dificuldade de ensinar, por exemplo, na universidade. Ela dizia que a Universidade de Teerã, no tempo que ela esteve dando aula, porque ela deu aula até 2 anos atrás, quando ela se mudou agora para a cidade de Seattle, nos Estados Unidos, ela foi professora durante anos na Universidade de Teerã, e ela dizia que aquele curso de artes foi, no tempo em que ela dava aula, ela não sabe dizer se agora, 2 anos passados, ela era uma ilha de liberdade, e que ela dizia sempre para os alunos isso, que os alunos deveriam mesmo ser muito livres, ser muito criativos, que eles deveriam escrever com liberdade, e que ela jamais deixou que um censor aparecesse lá para ver os trabalhos e as criações dos estudantes. Ela dizia assim, não, os estudantes têm que ser livres para criar, os estudantes têm que ser livres, eles são apenas estudantes, são pessoas que estão criando, estão buscando os seus caminhos, e não admitia, então, uma censura a esses estudantes. Então, ela via aquilo como realmente um oásis de liberdade no centro de Teherã. Mas ela diz também o seguinte, que quanto a essa história, em terceiro lugar, quanto a essa história de que os censores são conselheiros, são pessoas que aconselham, que podem, são capazes de dizer que são o que é melhor, o que deveria ser feito ou não deveria ser feito. Ela diz assim, isso é uma mentira. Na minha opinião, eles são censores e ponto. Eles são só censores. Eles não podem saber nada do que nós sabemos da criação, da arte, porque é nisso que nós nos formamos, é isso que a gente foi educada nisso. Então não é um censor, o censor não está capacitado para nos dizer o que é que nós devemos ou não devemos fazer, porque eles simplesmente não sabem nada disso. Eu acho que é uma atitude assim muito corajosa, naturalmente, da Nagmeh, numa situação que sempre, como diz ela, balança numa linha vermelha que às vezes fica muito próxima e às vezes fica um pouco mais distante, mas que sempre está ali. Nagmeh, eu também me surpreendi muito, nos surpreendemos todos quando nós estivemos no Irã, de ver jovens tão vivos nas praças de Teherã. O que os jovens esperam da arte e da cultura? I would like to, when we were in Tehran, we were really surprised to see so many young people on the street, so strong people. They are not. They are young people that fulfilled the square in front of the cultural center, for example. There were thousands of young people watching theater and watching public performances, street performances, and they were together, and I feel they want and they love this freedom. They would like to have it. Anyway, what do you think these young people expect from art, from culture, with this youth, this so strong youth that they have? Oh, just one moment, I have to translate something. Ela falava também, from before, ela falava também que a arte é um rio que não pode ser impedido. Não adianta você botar um limite naquele rio, porque o rio vai buscar outros espaços, outros lugares por onde correr, vai passar por aquilo, buscar outros caminhos, e que a cultura e que a arte no Irã é isso. Por mais que você bloqueie, não dá para deter, porque por causa também desse tão forte passado cultural e histórico, onde há uma poesia tão importante, uma música tão importante, um teatro tão importante, uma literatura tão importante naquele país. Então não há como bloquear o fluxo desse rio. I was telling about the river, the story that I got. So tell me about the youth and the connection that they have with art and what they expect from art.
Yeah, actually, as you know, there is a very huge population of young people in Iran. And actually, when for the first time I went to a theater in some other countries except Iran years ago, I went for the first time I went to a theater in like Paris. I was so surprised about the age of the people who came to the theater. So I was so surprised because I understood that most of the audience in other countries are from aged people, not from the young people. But in Iran, it is completely different. Even here in Seattle, when you go to theater, most of the people are more like aged people, not young people. And in Iran, this is not the same. Iran is so exceptional in terms of the age of the audience. And I think there are so many reasons for that. First of all, and the most simple answer is that there is no much way of entertainment in Iran. So you don't have nightclub, you don't have pub, you don't have place for dancing. So not having all those kinds of entertainment push young people to watch theater, to see theater, or attend a cinema room, or do something more cultural. You know, sometimes that's good, yeah, that you don't have so many different ways of entertainment. I'm not, you know, I don't believe this, but anyway, that is a phenomenon that you can find in Iran. I think that is the main reason that young people in Iran try to be more active as the theater audience or cinema audience, because they are seeking entertainment. On the other hand, it seems that Iranian young people are more related to political and social issues in compare with so many other countries in the world. So they really want to make change. They really want to make change. They are so enthusiastic about political and cultural and social situation, and you can find it in election period, that how they are active when a social or political change is going to be happen. So I think that is the second answer. And actually, what they do expect from art, I think first thing they really expect from art is honesty. They really want the artists to be honest with them and to share their own real thought and experiences with them, and try to find a way to communicate with them, to show something to them, and to listen their voice as well. So that is some kinds of interactional relationship in between young generation audience and the performers. I think this is not kind of so-called bourgeois theater that they just come to watch, to see a theater and just claps and leave the theater. So that's a kind of that's a kind of intercultural, intersectional, anything relationship in between audience and the performer. That is very important thing. So what they expect from the art is first honestly, and then they are seeking new ways of narrative. Doesn't matter in theater or in painting or in cinema. And the last and the final answer is that they really want to hear something about political and social issues in theater. So I think theater in Iran, especially in recent 20 years, could make this ground that you as a young audience can find something interesting and something unusual and something unexceptional, or actually something that you don't think about on the stage about social and political issues.
Great, that's great. Então, a Nagmeh fala de coisas muito interessantes. Ela diz que nessa saída dela do Irã para outros lugares, por exemplo, ela tendo ido a Paris, ela se surpreendeu em encontrar um teatro onde o público era maiormente de idade. Ele diz assim, o público acaba sendo um público, não só em Paris, mas em muitos outros lugares, um público que tem uma certa idade. Mas isso é completamente oposto ao que acontece no Irã. No Irã, o público é principalmente jovem. feito de jovens. E esses jovens, então, têm muitas expectativas sobre o teatro. Eles dizem que o teatro é um espaço de encontro que eles não têm em outros lugares. Então, por exemplo, eles não têm lá nightclubs, eles não têm lá boates, lugares para dançar, não tem muitas opções de entretenimento desse tipo, mas então o teatro acaba sendo, ir ao teatro ou ir ao cinema, uma forma de encontro, um espaço de encontro, um espaço de vivenciar a cultura. Uma outra coisa é que eles acabam esperando dos artistas muita honestidade. Então, esperam que essas ideias elas tanto sejam uma comunicação desse artista a este público, mas também um escutar da voz deste público. E que os iranianos, os jovens iranianos, são muito engajados e eles esperam muito da arte, porque eles esperam muito do mundo. Eles têm esperanças, eles são pessoas muito participativas politicamente, eles se impressionam muito e querem ouvir questões políticas, questões sociais naquele teatro, que aquele teatro reflita isso e que não seja assim, meramente um entretenimento burguês de fim de noite, que eles esperam do teatro isso, que o teatro tome, levante essa voz, né? E que essas questões sociais e políticas, eles esperam que estejam presentes neste teatro também. E depois questões narrativas, então as formas também de como essas questões são apresentadas. Que não basta um teatro tradicional e comportado ou burguês assim. Então eles também querem ver propostas inovadoras que possam representar, né, espelhar. Nagmeh, I would like to ask you, when we say about when we talk about contemporary theater, we I saw when I was in Iran that there was a moment in the theater where I could also interview some artists, Iranian artists, and I could see that there was a big impact in a certain moment where Western plays and Western theater entered Iran. And then, for example, the, the, in the 50s, for example, in the middle of the 20th century, there was an important entering of some artists. I mean, for example, Garcia Lorca and some Beckett also, and some artists entered very strongly in Iranian theater. And how do you think this entering happened? Does it happen as a way of a kind of mirror for the Iranian society, or do you think that it was just the interest for a cosmopolitan, a kind of cosmopolitan interest? I don't know if you understand my question.
I did.
Let me just translate. Em um certo momento, na metade do século XX, ou um pouco no final, existe a entrada dos autores dramáticos do teatro ocidental no Irã. Então, existe a chegada do Beckett, existe a chegada do Garcia Lorca e de autores clássicos, autores importantes, assim, mais ocidentais. Em que medida essa entrada aconteceu? Ela entrou como uma busca de um espelhamento, de um reflexo da sociedade iraniana, ou ela veio só como uma busca de um cosmopolitismo?
Uh, yeah, actually, Luis, that's a great question, actually. And I think it can be also the subject of a PhD thesis to work on how, foreign plays came to Iran and how Iranian theater was affected by those foreign plays. But anyway, I think the history of Iranian of foreign plays coming to Iran traces back to about more than 100 years ago. So foreign plays came with modernism to Iran. So that was part of one of the aspects of modernism, along with women freedom, along with democracy, along with parliament, and so many other aspects of modernism came to Iran. So theater was part of that. And for the first time, theater, the people who went to other countries, mostly to France, to educate in different language and to just be educated as a doctor or an engineer and so on and so forth. They brought these foreign plays to Iran. And the two very first playwrights whose plays came to Iran were Molière from France and Shakespeare from England. So these two playwrights were the very first playwrights whose plays were translated to Farsi, and Iranian audience could watch or could see or could read their writings. And then gradually the other playwrights came to Iran based on political situations. So for example, leftist translator translated all the Brecht plays in a very specific period of time. And some of other less leftist, more nihilist intellectuals in Iran started to translate, for example, Beckett, and try to introduce Beckett to Iranian audience. So there is a very, very interesting history that how political aspects affected on translation of foreign plays in Iran, and how Iranian playwrights were under the influence of these plays. But I think there was something more interesting among the other aspects of this history, which is, first of all, Iranians are good adaptators, actually. So when for the first time Molière's play came to Iran, they never staged, they never were staged just as they were. Some of Iranian writers and so-called playwrights try to adopt these plays culturally based on Iranian families and Iranian cultures, and based on what happened in Iran. So the very first Molière's play, which went to stage in Iran, were kind of adopted by Iranian culture. And that is something that still happened. You can find some foreign plays in Iran that are staged as they are. And at the same time, you will find a bunch of adaptations of foreign plays. Again, if I try to just find something in my own experience, I have adapted Julius Caesar by Shakespeare and Electra by Sophocles. Again, I will show you, this is kind of canvas reading. So that is the play that I adapted from Julius Caesar, written by Shakespeare. And that is a play by Sophocles called Electra that I adapted in a different way. So yeah, so actually I'm very pro this movement of translation of foreign plays, because we really need to know what's happening in Iran. You know, Iran is very isolated country in political terms, but I really hope that this political isolation don't stop us to be familiar more with what happened in the world in playwriting, in arts in general.
Wow, great. Nagmeh, a Nagmeh está falando para a gente conta para a gente que essas traduções e essa entrada do teatro ocidental veio há cerca de 100 anos, de fato, e que veio com busca de democracia, de liberdade da mulher, e veio com todo esse sopro de modernidade no Irã. E que esses textos acabaram entrando também com traduções que acabaram sendo muito importantes. Ela mesma traduziu Júlio César, traduziu, agora não me lembro o segundo espetáculo. What was the other one? Julius Caesar and the other play that...
Electra, by Sophocles.
Electra. Ok, Electra. E traduziu Electra também. Então, e ela diz que, por exemplo, quando Molière chegou, por exemplo, ao Irã, ele acabou recebendo traduções e adaptações muito interessantes, porque eles são muito bons adaptadores no Irã, e eles fizeram adaptações àquela realidade que foram muito bem sucedidas. Ela diz que existe um isolamento crítico no Irã, de fato, mas que ela espera que esse isolamento crítico não impeça o avanço deles e a integração deles, o conhecimento do mundo de que se precisa quando se entra em contato com esses textos estrangeiros e com o mundo externo, né? Apesar de todo esse isolamento que é imposto ao Irã. Let me make you a last question for today. A lot to talk about, and also about 1001 Nights, because it's a passion, é uma paixão. Inclusive, nós temos que falar de outras coisas. Eu vou fazer uma última questão, inclusive porque eu quero muito falar também sobre as 1001 Noites, que é uma paixão da Nagmeh, e que também, além dessa paixão, né, ela é uma estudiosa por mais de 25 anos das 1001 Noites. Mas a gente vai falar sobre isso numa outra ocasião. Agora eu queria perguntar a ela, now I would like to ask you... eu gostaria de perguntar a ela sobre a influência, o espaço que o teatro tradicional no Irã tem no Irã hoje em dia. Se ele é respeitado realmente ou se ele é tido só como uma manifestação de menor importância, como a gente faz muitas vezes com o teatro popular aqui no Brasil, né? Se isso acontece, se há um espaço de reconhecimento dessa importância, ou se isso é só uma fantasia e se esse teatro está realmente morrendo. I would like to ask you, Nagmeh, like as a last question for now. I would like to ask you about the traditional theater, the Iranian traditional theater, and this space it really have in Iran. Because when we see sometimes this traditional theater is took as is considered just an old-fashioned theater. Sometimes it's considered it's about to die. Like, for example, when we see in many different forms of puppet theater, Iranian puppet theater, for example, that we see that there are just some old people that are still making some performance. When we see, for example, Baruz Garibpur, trying to rebuild Khmer Shabazi and the traditional puppetry, Iranian traditional puppetry. This is something that we recognize in Brazil as a movement that some important artists make to give some value to an art that is actually dying, that is actually fighting for surviving in a world that is not suitable for it. Do you think that there is, for example, when we see the theater that you used to make in coffee shops, for example, uh, is does this exist really, or is just something for festivals, for tourists, or something that is really dying?
Uh, yeah, I think the situation is the same as Brazil.
Um momento, eu
Yeah,
estava
yeah,
perguntando só
go ahead.
sobre o teatro tradicional iraniano, se ele realmente é uma forma que sobrevive ou é só uma lembrança de alguma coisa que está de fato morrendo. Então a gente fala de alguns artistas importantes, como um artista chamado Beruz Garipur, que tenta reviver uma forma tradicional de teatro de bonecos, mas a gente também sabe que tem muitos artistas muito velhos que são os únicos que sustentam algumas tradições, que eu não sei se realmente no Irã, e é isso que eu pergunto a Nagmeh, se elas realmente estão morrendo ou se existe alguma expectativa de sobrevivência em um mundo tão avesso a ela. Ok, ok. Sorry.
Actually, yeah, I was telling you that I think the situation is very the same as what happened in Brazil and maybe some other countries like Japan. Maybe I have been in Japan many times, and I understood that traditional theater now is just more for tourists and more for that I mean it's just part of the history, so it's not very relevant uh, at the time. So yeah, that is the same in Iran, unfortunately. I think the traditional theater in Iran now are more uses or as tourist attraction and just some governmental people try hard to keep at least the religious part of this traditional theater. Uh, but I think the good news is that um, theater schools in Iran try really hard to let the students know about these forms. So it may help this form to survive because new generation now are aware about them. And then they try to keep them because now they know them, and that is a good point about theater schools in Iran. When I was a student, I remember that we had so many courses related to traditional theater in Iran, and now I know how valuable they were. So my always suggestion is that maybe theater professors, theater teachers, theater schools can make it survive. So this is part of the responsibility of theater schools. And the other thing is that, as you said, that is exactly the same in Iran. Some artists like Behruz Gharipur, most importantly, Bahram Beyzai. Oh, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
Yeah.
but we can see the video
Yeah.
right now.
I don't know why, because my video is on.
Okay.
Maybe I don't know what's happening.
Turn off
Anyway,
and turn on, maybe.
but you
Maybe
can
it's
hear me. So yeah,
okay.
so the thing is that actually some people like Behruz Gharipur, you mentioned his name, and also Bahram Beyzai, the master actually. Sir Bahram Bezai. These people and some more people try hard to keep this traditional way of performance as part of our, cultural legacy. Yeah, I think something started from the very, there you go. Yeah.
Right, perfect.
Okay. Now, yeah.
Great.
So, some great artists try hard to keep these forms alive. And the good thing about, especially about Bahram Beyzai, is that he keeps the form, and he tried to let us introduced with this traditional forms, and at the same time he puts some new ideas and some new notions and thematically new way of thinking on this traditional form. So yes, I think we all countries, people like you, like us, like people from Japan, we really need to try hard to keep this treasure of traditional plays, because I think part of our roots and part of our identity is hidden in this place, and we still have so many things that we need to know about them.
Perfect. A Nagmeh conta que, de fato, existe muita dificuldade de sobrevivência dessas formas tradicionais, exatamente como no Brasil, mas ela diz que nas escolas eles tentam apresentar esses elementos, essas formas tradicionais de teatro, e que ela mesma na escola, ela também ouviu falar dessas formas tradicionais, e ela acha que isso é muito importante, porque isso forma um background para os artistas, para as pessoas e para o povo, que esses são, de fato, tesouros que guardam a identidade daquele povo e que são muito importantes por causa disso. O governo também tenta fazer algumas iniciativas, mas, sobretudo, no campo do teatro religioso. E artistas importantes também mantêm vivas essas tradições. Então, artistas importantes, eles usam desses elementos tradicionais para apresentar um teatro moderno, mas que apresenta aquelas raízes que as pessoas reconhecem com aquelas raízes tradicionais que elas têm e que são raízes da sua cultura, mas que, de fato, há muita dificuldade na existência destas formas tradicionais. Well, Nagmeh, I will just see if we have some questions. We have one question from an important artist from Minas Gerais, that is Conceição Rosier, that asks, okay, but we know that there's no, she couldn't watch to the first part of the video, but she was asking, we know that dancing and singing have a lot of limitations, especially for women, of course, but is theater in Iran surviving or not? Is theater alive in Iran or not in this moment? Então, ela pergunta, estou falando da pergunta da Conceição Rosier, nós estamos partindo das últimas perguntas. A Conceição Rosier, de Minas Gerais, uma artista importante, pergunta se sabe que a música e o canto e a dança no Irã estão proibidos, sobretudo para mulheres, mas se o teatro ainda sobrevive lá. Ok, perfect.
So yeah, I try to answer shortly. Actually, yes, theater is alive in Iran. Fortunately, still it's alive, and I hope it will alive for a long time. But yeah, at the very beginning of this talk, I was telling you that how we try to be creative to avoid red lines, and one of these creations refers to dancing and singing on a stage. So if you don't call this dance and just call it as rhythmic movement, it is allowed. Just need to call it, just need to change the title. I know it's very complicated. You do the same thing, but you don't call it dance, because dance is the forbidden word. But rhythmic movement has no problem. I think the situation is going to be worse because of some political aspects. Nobody knows what happened in the future. But at the moment, these kinds of tricks can solve the problem. And about the women singing, as far as I know, if one woman sing on stage, this is forbidden. But if two women sing on a stage, or a man and woman both together sing on a stage, there won't be any problem. So in many plays I have seen, there is one solo voice of a woman, and there is a very far away singing man or woman. You even can't hear that. But censors be happy with this, because they say, okay, there are two people singing. So at the beginning of this meeting, I was telling my friends that how complicated is censorship in Iran. It's not as easy as this is forbidden and this is not. So you always have a way to find your way.
Então, a Nagmeh diz que o teatro, sim, está vivo e ela espera que esteja vivo por muitos anos. E ela diz que existem, como ela disse no início da conversa, o teatro é muito complicado, essa relação do teatro com a censura. Então, por exemplo, se você diz dança, a dança está proibida, a dança não pode. Mas se você disser movimentos rítmicos no teatro, então aí pode. Então é só uma questão de como você vai lidar com isso. Então, por exemplo, até onde ela sabe, uma mulher sozinha cantando no palco não é possível, é proibido. Mas se tiver uma mulher e um homem, ou duas mulheres cantando no palco, aí tudo bem. Então ela diz assim, às vezes você tem uma mulher cantando e lá no fundo você ouve uma voz de um homem fazendo uma segunda voz ou algum canto lá atrás. E isso é proibido. Isso satisfaz o censor. Diz, não, tudo bem, está ótimo. Agora tem duas pessoas cantando. São duas pessoas cantando, não é uma mulher sozinha, então está tudo bem. Então são essas formas criativas de sobrevivência que eles exploram para poder manter a arte viva. Perfeito. Tem alguma questão mais, Maurício? Você lembra de alguma outra questão? Vocês querem fazer alguma questão? Você e a Sandra? Maurício, Sandra? Ou a gente... Sim.
Não, eu poderia perguntar a ela, ela, no caso, quando encena os espetáculos dela, ela faz esse trabalho porque uma companhia chama, ou é uma iniciativa dela? Como é que ela consegue colocar os textos dela em cena, digamos assim, para circular? Como ela consegue fazer isso?
Sandra would like to ask you, how do you manage to perform your shows? For example, is there someone that invites you and that says, okay, I would like to perform this play, or do you make some movement to make it happen? How does this happen to you?
Yeah, thank you, Sandra, for your question. Actually, I mean, there are different ways, but I always work with some specific groups that I have a history with them. So there are some theater companies or theater groups that I always work with them, and they always ask me for a new play. And sometimes even before writing the play, we talk about the theme. So one of my very recent plays staged in Tehran, like about 2 months ago, called Infant, started with my talking with the director of that company, and we were talking about how immigration is important subject now, and how women are suffering, are double suffering from this problem or this issue. So then I started to write a play based on this issue, which is called, Infant, and was staged like 2 months ago. So I always work with the same directors and with the same theater companies, because I feel more comfortable working with them. I can understand them, they can understand me better. So we have a kind of, we can comprehend each other after years working with together. But sometimes some very unknown people just ask me to whether I have a new play or not. And I at first I start to talk with them, and if I feel comfortable and I feel we are in the same page, then I will offer them with some of my plays. So these are two main ways of staging my plays. And the very last one is that in some other cities but Tehran, other small or big cities, I always get this request for performing my plays, and I have no restriction for that. I say that wherever of Iran you want to perform my play, that's free. Do that, because that is because I want to spread theater in all over in Iran. Because a problem we really face with is that theater and most of cultural activities are centralized in the capital, in Tehran, and that is not a good thing. If we really want to change the society, we need to spread out the art all over the country. So whoever asked me to perform a play of mine in any place of Iran except Tehran, I agree. My only condition is that I don't agree to cut my play or to change anything. To perform it as it is, and there is no other condition. So there are three main ways that I am asked to offer a play of mine to be performed.
Ok. A Nagmeh diz que normalmente ela trabalha com grupos com os quais ela fica muito confortável, então ela mantém conversações com grupos com quem ela trabalha frequentemente, e trabalha com um grupo. Agora, por exemplo, ela está encenando um trabalho que há 2 meses está sendo encenado no Irã, que é uma peça nova dela, e que ela teve fazendo isso em contato com esse diretor com quem ela já trabalhou e em quem ela confia. Ela diz que, às vezes, as pessoas também sabem dos textos dela e pedem para representar, e quando ela sente confortável, sente que as pessoas, no meio das conversações, estão mantendo ideias que são próximas das dela, que ela concorda, quando ela sente que há uma afinidade, então ela realmente permite e negocia, então, esse tipo de trabalho, a apresentação do espetáculo. Mas que no Irã, fora a cidade de Teerã, nas outras cidades, ela libera o texto completamente para que qualquer pessoa faça em outras cidades de Teerã, porque ela sente que ela tem uma responsabilidade de espalhar esse teatro pelo Irã, porque o teatro está muito concentrado na cidade de Teerã. Então, qualquer pessoa que no Irã se comprometa a manter o texto dela sem cortar, sem editar, manter o texto integralmente e que queira encenar, ela simplesmente diz, faça, pode fazer. E aí as pessoas fazem, então, esse espetáculo. Então, essas são as 3 formas principais de estabelecer, assim, de liberar os textos, de fazer os textos dela, né, de apresentar os textos dela. Maurício, tudo bem? Tem alguma pergunta a mais? Você quer fazer uma pergunta ou tem alguma pergunta que apareceu?
Não, eu acho que no YouTube foram mais observações, né? Muita gente parabenizando pela iniciativa. Gostaria de aproveitar e agradecer também pela participação de todas e todos lá. em especial a Janaína, do Chá de Lima da Pérsia, que sempre nos apoia aí, e ao nosso amigo Horácio, que está nos prestigiando também, e dizer que para a gente realmente é uma oportunidade incrível de poder se aproximar de uma cultura tão rica, e nós, considerando, claro, a colonização do Brasil, sendo um país tão recente, poder enxergar assim como essa cultura persa, que é milenar, e como ela influencia na nossa cultura, isso é realmente impressionante, assim, né? Para a gente, enquanto artista, e para o nosso grupo, eu tenho certeza que é um projeto que vai influenciar fortemente, assim. Então, eu gostaria de agradecer muito pela oportunidade de ouvir a Nagmeh e convidar também as pessoas a segui-la aí no Instagram e acompanhar o trabalho que ela desenvolve lá. Esperamos que ela possa em breve nos visitar aqui no Brasil.
First, Mauricio is thanking you, thanking all the people that is following this meeting, saying that there are some Iranian people that are connected to us that is following this meeting, and like Orash and like the 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 Janaína, that is a Brazilian woman that organizes a blog which name is Persian Lime and talks about Persia and so on, Iranian culture. And he would like to thank you very much for this meeting, and say that it's a surprise for us to see how people in this project and watching to our play recognize the connections that we have between Persian culture and Brazilian culture. There are many connections. We have to study more, but it was really a surprise. And we hope to meet you someday live, to touch you someday, to have you here in Brazil someday. We hope that we can make it happen. Anyway, I would like to show some images that will surprise you. I will show you here, for example, this image. This is from Brazil.
Oh no, unbelievable,
Yeah,
unbelievable.
it's a Brazilian tradition. This is a woman disguised as a Mateus, that is a character that we perform in the New Year in Brazil. This is for the arrival of the magic kings that came to Jesus. In this day, this is January the 6th, we have many Brazilian groups, popular groups, that perform this character that is exactly like Haji Firuz in Iran, in the Iranian New Year. This is a Brazilian artist performing a Brazilian tradition. This is, oh, let me, so sorry. Just one moment. These are some images. Let me show you. This is in Iran. This is in Iran, and the first image was in Brazil. Look, it's really similar.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
but there's a lot more. This is Iran.
Oh,
This is Brazil.
oh my God.
This is Iran. This is Brazil. No, this is Iran. This is
This is
Iran.
the one.
And this is in Brazil.
Oh,
This is in Brazil. 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 In Iran. In Iran. in Brazil.
Oh, no.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
Brazil, 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 Brazil. This is Iran. This is Brazil.
Oh no, unbelievable.
This is Brazil. This is Brazil. Unbelievable, isn't it? This is Brazil. It looks like a dove, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wait. Just one more. This is Iran. This is Iran. This is Brazil. This is Iran. 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 Brazil. Brazil. This is Iran. This is Brazil. Amazing, isn't it?
Amazing, unbelievable.
This is Mubarak, the main character of Jaime Shabazi. This is, oh, sorry. This is Benedito in
Oh,
Brazil,
oh my
the main character of our popular theater, of Babau in Brazil. And we had the Chico Simões, that is the artist that present among us. He was in this meeting saying that about the connection between these two characters, Benedito and Mubarak, that has the same name. Benedito means blessed, Benedict, like Mubarak. This is Pahlevan Kachal,
yeah,
from Apple Theater Group.
yeah.
This is our Benedito, a Brazilian puppet theater, Globes Theater. This is Jaime Shabazi, and it's Jaime Shabazi, and it's very, very similar to our theater. This is Brazil. It looks like the same the hall that you have. It's really similar. We have this is in Brazil. This is in Iran. Puppetry in Iran. A puppet festival in Brazil. Thousands of people watching puppet theater in Brazil. This is the hall, the hall in Iran, very similar to that to our Zabumba.
Mm.
Then it's just for showing some ideas and some connections that we think that maybe there's no historic connection, but there's a human connection between us, where we use this art as a mirror for ourselves, for our culture, for our people. And this is something that we have to talk later about, so many connections we have.
Yeah,
Well,
you really made me surprised. You really made me surprised, Luis. Congratulations. That was great. Yeah, thank
there's a
you for
lot
showing
more.
me these things. I didn't expect so many common things. So yeah, you really made me surprised.
It was a surprise for us to have some connections we have between Iranian people and the Brazilian people. We have the same love for poetry. In Brazil, we love our poets, our poetry is transmuted also in music, in songs, but we have a big love for these composers, these poets in Brazil. We have many connections in the music environment and in the musical environment and in the poetic environment also. And we have a lot to talk about this.
We have so many things to talk about.
Yeah,
Hopefully
we
soon
we will do it. We will do it.
we will.
Thank you very much, Nagmeh. We will try to connect this speech, your speech, and try to translate it in words for people can watch to it in Facebook. I don't know if we could make the connection or not, Mauricio, but anyway, we will try to make a good video so we can keep this talk. And we will talk tomorrow. I will call you up so we can talk about the project and so on. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was great to be among you. Thank you. I felt so good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know that you made a very big effort to be with us at this time, and thank you very much. We will be in touch. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.